So this happened just a few nights ago, and I still feel like I'm coming down from it. It wasn't just dinner, it was a full-on wake-up call. A lifetime of being the generous one came to a head, and I snapped in a way I didn't see coming. It started with a text from my mom. Family dinner Thursday night. Dress nice. We picked somewhere fancy! That should have been my first clue. Fancy in my family usually meant pricey, and pricey always meant my card at the end of the night. But I thought, fine. One night, maybe they'll be chill about it. Spoiler alert, they weren't. We pull up to this upscale place where even the appetizers sound like poetry and come in portions the size of my thumb. Velvet booths, soft jazz, white tablecloths. It looked like the kind of place billionaires get bored at. My sister, Eden, 34, showed up wearing enough jewelry to fund a down payment. My brother, Dean, 31, was already at the table sipping whiskey like he owned a hedge fund. My parents, Linda and Mark, looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog, matching clothes, smug smiles. I'm Nova. I'm 35. And for the past 10 years, I've picked up almost every check this family's ever written. I tried to stay positive. Let's have a nice night, I told myself. I even complimented Eden's new bracelet, pretending I didn't recognize it from a luxury drop she posted about on Instagram last week. Guess who probably paid for it? We order. Or rather, they order like they've blacked out the prices on the menu. Dean gets lobster tail with saffron risotto. My parents split the wagyu platter. Eden? She orders the $78 steak with truffle mac, with bone marrow butter, with roasted garlic aioli, and a wine pairing. Then she turns to me, glass in hand, and says, "So lucky you're the one with the black card, huh, Nova? We should have brought a wheelbarrow for your cash." Laughter. From everyone. Like I was the punchline of a joke I never signed up for. I smiled, tight, forced. Inside, I was cracking. I wasn't just annoyed. I was hurt. Not because they joked, I'm used to that, but because they didn't care. I wasn't a person at that table. I was a wallet with a face. And Eden wasn't done. Honestly, Nova, you make so much, and you don't even have kids. What else are you spending it on? Another round of laughter. That's when something inside me clicked. I pulled out my phone. One text. Sent it to my business partner, Micah. Activate Plan B. It's time. Then I stood up. Calm, collected. Eden raised a brow. Where are you going? I looked at her, really looked at her. The kind of look that makes silence stretch. You'll find out soon. And I walked out. Just like that. Left the steak, the wine, the tension sitting in my empty chair. I didn't run. I didn't slam the door. I just walked back to my car, slipped in behind the wheel, and waited. Exactly 23 minutes later, my phone rang. Eden. What the hell, Nova? Are you serious? You left us here! With the bill! I put her on speaker and watched the restaurant lights flicker through my windshield. Relax, I said. It's covered. Just not by me. Pause. Then her voice rose. What does that mean? It means the restaurant just got a call from the co-owner, who happens to be my business partner's brother-in-law. Another pause. I could hear Mark in the background asking if someone could explain what was happening. They're going to need someone's card, I added, preferably one not connected to mine. Eden lost it. Full panic mode. You're joking. You wouldn't. You're not this petty. Petty? I laughed. No, petty is joking about me being your walking bank. This is educational. She was shrieking now. You've embarrassed all of us. That wasn't me. That was the $400 bill you just tried to stick me with. Click. I ended the call. 5 minutes later, the restaurant manager called me. Hi, Miss Torres. Your family's confused about the bill situation. Would you like to authorize payment? Nope, I said, popping a mint into my mouth. They're big kids. Let them handle it. Silence. Then understood. I hung up and leaned back in my seat, watching the stars above the city blur in my windshield. I wasn't angry. I was done. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. Ding. Text from Dean. You really ditched us? What the hell is wrong with you? Another from Eden. You've ruined this family. You better fix it. And then my mom, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this isn't love. Was it though? I turned off notifications and started driving. Nowhere specific, just away. It was the first time in years I'd felt free. They could whine. They could panic. They could call me selfish. But I wasn't the villain in this story. I just stopped being their hero. The next morning, I was woken up by the doorbell ringing like it was trying to rip itself off the frame. At first, I thought maybe it was a delivery. Maybe something I forgot I ordered during one of those late-night impulse sprees. But when I pulled back the curtain and saw my brother Dean pacing on my porch, my stomach dropped. And he wasn't alone. Behind him, my mom stood stiff, arms crossed like she was bracing for war. My dad was there too, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I didn't want to open the door. My instinct screamed not to. But I also knew if I didn't deal with this now, they'd just keep coming back. Or worse, involve more people. So I opened it, slowly, and barely had time to say anything before Dean pushed past me, muttering something about how this was unbelievable. Mom followed, eyes cold and sharp. My dad gave me a nod, the kind you give a stranger you barely trust. I shut the door and leaned against it for a second, wondering how this became my life. Dean didn't wait for small talk. He turned and started in immediately, his voice low but clipped. "What the hell was that last night? You thought it was funny to leave us hanging like that? You humiliated us." I didn't answer right away. I just stared at him, waiting for him to stop pacing long enough to actually listen. When he didn't, I cut in. "Funny? No. Eye-opening? Maybe." Mom stepped forward before he could respond. "Nova, this isn't how families handle things. You should have talked to us." I laughed, dry and humorless. "Talked? You mean like how you all laughed at me while ordering $500 worth of food without even asking if I was okay? Covering it?" My mom blinked but said nothing. My dad finally spoke, his voice tired. "You could have just said something at dinner. Instead, you made a scene. You embarrassed all of us." I shook my head, arms crossed. "No, you embarrassed yourselves. I just stopped playing along." Dean rolled his eyes. "You're acting like some victim. You're not. You're just bitter because you finally had to pay attention to the dynamics." That made me snap a little. "Oh, so now I'm bitter?" Not tired, not burnt out, not exhausted from years of being the only one giving. Just bitter. Great. Mom's tone softened, which somehow made it worse. "Nova, we didn't realize. We didn't know you felt this way." I looked at her, trying to find any trace of sincerity. "You didn't realize because you never asked. You assumed I was fine because I didn't complain. But that doesn't mean I wasn't breaking." My dad stepped closer, and for a moment, I thought he might actually apologize. Instead, he said, "You didn't have to walk out. That was cruel." I stared at him, feeling the weight of all the times I'd paid for birthdays, holidays, even emergency bills without complaint. "And you didn't have to treat me like a bank account. But here we are." Dean scoffed again. "You're so dramatic. You always have been." That hit a nerve. I turned to him, voice steady but low. "No, I've always been quiet. There's a difference. And maybe that's the problem. I let it go on too long because I didn't want to rock the boat. But now, I'm done swimming for a ship that keeps tossing me overboard." My mom looked like she was about to cry, but I didn't feel bad. "Not anymore, because tears don't erase years of being used." "So what?" she asked, her voice cracking. "You're just going to cut us off?" I didn't answer immediately. I needed them to sit in the silence, to understand that this wasn't a tantrum, it was a decision. "I'm going to do what's healthy for me," I said finally. "If that means distance, then yes." My dad exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples like I was a headache he didn't know how to get rid of. "You think you're making some kind of point, but all you're doing is tearing this family apart." I stared at him. "No, you all did that when you stopped treating me like part of it and started treating me like your safety net." Dean shook his head like I was being unreasonable. "You really think you're better than us now, huh? You've got money, a business. You think that gives you the right to act like a martyr?" I stepped forward, leveling my gaze at him. "I don't think I'm better. I think I'm finally aware. There's a difference. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe it's because deep down, you know I'm right." That silenced him, at least for a second. My mom looked like she wanted to reach for me, but stopped herself. "Nova," she said softly, "you've always been the strong one. We depended on you, yes, but not because we wanted to take advantage. We just thought you could handle it." I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. "You thought wrong." And for once, I didn't feel guilty for saying it. I didn't feel like I needed to soften the blow. Because the truth is, strength doesn't mean being everyone's fallback. It doesn't mean sacrificing your peace just to keep the peace. It was quiet after that. No one spoke. We just stood there, the four of us in a room that had never really felt like mine, even though I paid for everything in it. Eventually, my dad broke the silence. "We'll go. But this isn't over. We're still your family." "I know," I said. "And that's what makes it worse." Dean muttered something under his breath, probably another insult. I didn't care. They left, one by one. And when the door finally shut behind them, I locked it and leaned against it again, just like I had that morning. Only this time I wasn't bracing for a storm. I was standing in the eye of it. My phone buzzed a minute later. A text from Eden. I'd almost forgotten about her. Almost. "You've made a huge mistake. You better fix it, or else." I stared at the screen, no apology, no reflection. Just entitlement wrapped in veiled threats. I didn't respond. I wasn't playing defense anymore. I opened my laptop instead and logged into the shared family account they didn't know I still had access to. I took one last look at the automatic payments I'd been covering: insurance, utilities at my parents' house, Eden's rent loan. Then I deleted them all. Every single one. Then I logged out. And just like that, the real consequences began. Part 3 is when they start to feel it. When the luxuries fade and reality hits harder than they ever expected. And me, I finally breathe. 3 days passed. Quiet, eerie days. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels like something's coming. I didn't hear from them at first, which surprised me. I thought Eden would show up banging on my door or Dean would launch a group text rant, but nothing. Just radio silence. And yet, I knew something had shifted. It wasn't over. They were regrouping, planning. That's the thing about people who benefit from you. Never having boundaries, they don't take your silence as peace. They take it as a challenge. The first real sign came in the form of a voicemail from my mother early morning. Her voice was low, tight, the kind of tone she uses when she wants to sound calm, but is barely holding it together. "Nova, we need to talk. Your father's pension payment didn't go through and Eden is dealing with some issues at her place. We just need to figure things out." Translation: you cut the cord and now everything's falling apart. I didn't call back. I just listened, deleted the voicemail, and got up to make coffee. That same afternoon, I got a message from the building manager at Eden's apartment. She'd listed me as her emergency financial contact, something I never agreed to, and apparently she was late on rent. Again, they were trying to confirm if I'd be covering this month's balance. I stared at the message, then calmly replied, "Not my responsibility. Please remove my name from your records." No emotion. No guilt. Just facts. A few hours later, Eden finally broke her silence. She sent a text, short and sharp. "Are you seriously doing this right now? You're abandoning your own family for what, pride?" I didn't answer. I was beyond debating morals with people who used guilt as currency. The next day, things escalated. Dean called me, this time not with his usual sarcasm, but with something closer to desperation. "Mom and Dad's utilities got cut," he said. "Water and gas. What the hell did you do?" I kept my tone steady. I stopped paying for things I never agreed to pay for in the first place. He cursed under his breath. "They didn't know you were doing that. You didn't tell them." "And why would I?" I shot back. "They didn't ask. They just assumed." "That's the problem, Dean. It's not the money. It's the assumption that I owe them my life for being born." He scoffed. "You think cutting off the basics is a solution? What? You want us homeless now? I want you to take responsibility," I replied. "For once. I've carried this family for too long. This isn't punishment. It's real life." He hung up on me. I expected that. What I didn't expect was the email from my father the next morning. Not a call, not a text, an email formal, cold. It read like something a lawyer would draft. He accused me of emotional cruelty, claimed my actions were deliberately harmful to the cohesion of the family, and implied that I had neglected my duties as the eldest child. I read it twice, stunned. Neglected my duties? Was there a handbook I missed? Was I supposed to sacrifice my mental health, my finances, My sanity for the rest of my life to fulfill some invisible job description? I started to type a response, something long and angry, but stopped myself. They didn't want understanding. They wanted control back. So instead of replying, I blocked his email address. The fallout continued. Eden posted a cryptic message on her social media, something about betrayal and fake love from real blood. I didn't engage, but I did notice the comments. Friends chiming in with, "You deserve better and family should lift each other up, not tear each other down." I recognized a few names. People the first loaned money to on her behalf. People who never repaid me. They all had so much to say now, without context, without facts. It was like watching a movie where the villain edits the script to make herself the victim. By the end of the week, my mom called again. This time, she was crying. Not fake tears, not dramatics, real crying. I could hear it in her voice. "I don't understand what we did that was so wrong," she said, sniffling. "We're your parents. We raised you. We gave you everything we could." That's when I felt something stir in me, not anger, not resentment, something closer to sadness. Because that was the thing, they really believed that. They truly thought that giving me life was a lifetime invoice I was supposed to pay back in installments of sacrifice. "You gave me everything," I said quietly, but never peace, never fairness, never the space to say no without consequences. She didn't respond right away. I could hear her breathing, uneven, like she was trying to decide whether to keep begging or hang up. "Can we at least meet? Just to talk?" I hesitated. I didn't want to reopen wounds that were finally scabbing over, but a part of me needed closure, so I agreed. We met at a small cafe, neutral ground. I got there early, ordered tea, and sat by the window. When she walked in, she looked smaller somehow, less composed, tired. She sat down and didn't speak for a moment. Then she looked me in the eye and said, "I didn't realize how much we depended on you until you stopped showing up." I sipped my tea and said nothing. She continued, "I guess I thought you liked being the strong one. You always seemed so put together." I almost laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. "No one likes being the strong one, Mom. We do it because we have no choice, because no one else steps up. And when we finally say we're tired, everyone acts like we betrayed them." She nodded slowly. "Your father's angry. But I think he's scared. We've never had to do this without you." "You mean be adults?" I asked. She didn't answer, just looked down at her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I'm not trying to destroy this family," I said. "I just can't keep building something that only stands because I hold it up alone." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. It was the first real gesture that felt human, not manipulative. "We'll figure it out," she whispered. I didn't reply. I just held her hand for a second longer, then let go. We finished our tea in silence. No grand apologies, no dramatic speeches. Just quiet, like we were both realizing how fragile everything really was. As I walked to my car, I didn't feel victorious. I felt like I had finally stepped out of a story I didn't write. The kind where you play the hero, the villain, and the punching bag all at once. That night, I turned off my phone. No texts, no calls. Just me, a glass of wine, and the first real breath I'd taken in years. But deep down, I knew Eden wasn't done. And Dean wasn't the type to let things go quietly. I had set off a chain reaction. And the next phase? It wasn't going to be forgiveness. It was going to be fire. It started small, almost subtle, like someone testing how far they could push before I noticed. A few missed calls from unknown numbers. A couple of strange emails from fake addresses, pretending to be old acquaintances. Then came a new wave of passive-aggressive posts from Eden, cryptic quotes about betrayal, loyalty, and karma, all vaguely aimed at me but never tagging my name. I ignored it all at first. Let her vent. Let her try to turn people against me. It didn't matter. I'd already walked away. But Eden never knew how to leave well enough alone. She wasn't satisfied with being mad. She needed to make it public. She needed someone to blame, someone to humiliate. And since I'd already taken myself out of her game, she decided to make me the villain in a story she could control. It began with a rumor. A mutual friend texted me out of nowhere saying, "Hey, just a heads up, Eden's been telling people you're having financial problems." Said you snapped because you lost everything and couldn't afford to keep helping the family. I read the message twice, then laughed out loud. Of course she couldn't admit the truth. That I chose to stop. That I decided I was done being used. No, it had to be a meltdown, a breakdown, a fall from grace. She couldn't stand the idea that I was fine without them, that I was thriving. So she rewrote the narrative. I didn't respond to the rumor. I didn't chase the lies. But I did watch, closely. I watched as more people started reaching out with concern, offering support with that thin layer of curiosity they hoped I wouldn't notice. People who hadn't checked on me in years suddenly wanted to meet for coffee, just to catch up. I declined every single one. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew how this game worked. Eden wanted control back. She was building her version of the truth, hoping I'd break under the weight of whispers. But I'd been carrying worse for years. Then came the real punch. One afternoon, I got a call from the bank about a flagged transaction. Someone had tried to use my old family-linked credit account one I had shut down a month ago to authorize a furniture purchase. The rep on the phone asked if I had approved the charge. I hadn't, and I told them that. But the name they gave me? Eden's. She had either forgotten I cut her off or she thought I wouldn't notice. Maybe she believed the account still had enough strings left to pull. I froze for a second, not out of shock but out of calculation. This wasn't about a couch or a credit card. This was a line being crossed. Intentional. Public. Aggressive. Eden wasn't lashing out anymore. She was escalating. I called her directly for the first time since the restaurant. She answered on the third ring, her voice cool. Wow, you still remember how to use a phone. I didn't bother with greetings. You tried to use my account. She didn't deny it, didn't stutter. It was an accident. I didn't realize it was still linked. Don't insult my intelligence, I said flatly. You knew what you were doing. There was a pause. Then she dropped the act. You think you can humiliate us and just walk away like some righteous martyr? You think cutting us off makes you better? I don't think it makes me better, I replied. I think it makes me free. She laughed bitterly. You're so full of yourself. You want everyone to think you're this empowered hero, but you're just a spoiled brat throwing a tantrum. No, Eden, I said, voice calm but firm. This isn't a tantrum. This is me choosing peace. And you trying to sabotage that only proves I made the right choice. She hung up before I could say anything else. A few minutes later, she posted another story, this time a screenshot of a fake conversation, pretending I begged her for money. I almost couldn't believe it. Almost. But deep down, I expected this. Eden didn't lose well. And when she did, she rewrote the rules. I reported the post, blocked her, not because I couldn't fight back, but because I was done living in her chaos. But just when I thought she couldn't stoop lower, she went after the one thing that still connected us, our parents. She showed up at their place crying, ranting about how I'd abandoned the family, how I was spreading lies, how I'd left them in financial ruin on purpose. She pulled out every trick in the book. Tears, guilt, drama. And they bought it. My mom called me that night, her voice shaking. Eden's devastated, she said. She says you've been poisoning people against us. I closed my eyes. I could feel the old guilt creeping in, clawing at the edges of my resolve. She's devastated because she lost access to my money, I replied. Not because I hurt her, because I stopped enabling her. My mom didn't answer at first. Then she said, Nova, this isn't you. You've always been the one who kept this family together. I smiled sadly. Exactly, I was. Until it started breaking me. But you can't just let it all fall apart, she whispered. I'm not, I said. I'm just not holding it up alone anymore. That was the last time we spoke for a while. The next few weeks were quiet again, but it wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of detachment. The kind that sets in when people realize they can't guilt trip you back into submission. Eden went silent too, at least publicly. But I heard from mutual friends that she was unraveling, losing support, burning bridges she thought were solid. People started questioning her story, started asking why she was so obsessed with me, why she kept pushing drama when I wasn't even responding. I didn't need to clear my name. Her own behavior did it for me. And I watched it all from a distance. Not with joy, not with revenge in my heart, but with clarity, with relief. I wasn't winning anything. I wasn't trying to. I was just free. And sometimes, that's enough. But just when things started settling, when I finally felt like I could breathe again, I got a message that stopped me cold. A photo, sent from an unknown number. It was a picture of me, taken outside my office, that morning. From a distance. No text, no explanation, just the image. My heart dropped. Not from fear, but from realization. This wasn't over. Eden had crossed a new line. And this time, it wasn't about money. It was personal. It was dangerous. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. The moment I saw that photo, I knew the game had changed. It wasn't about guilt anymore. It wasn't about control or manipulation or some desperate attempt to regain financial access. That photo meant I was being watched, stalked, tracked. And whether it was Eden herself or someone she sent, it didn't matter. The boundary I'd built, the wall I fought to maintain, had just been breached in a way I couldn't ignore. I stared at the picture for a long time, studying the angle, the distance, the lighting. It was taken around 9 a.m., right after I parked near the east entrance, which meant they had been waiting. They knew my routine. They knew where I worked, and they wanted me to know they were watching. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I went quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't come from fear but calculation. I took a screenshot of the number and sent it to a friend of mine, Cameron, who works in digital security. Within 30 minutes, he called me back. "The number's been rerouted through 2 virtual carriers," he said, his voice tight. "It's a burner app, not traceable to a name, but I checked usage patterns. Whoever it is, they've used this same method before on other people. You're not the first person they've sent these kinds of messages to." That hit me hard. I asked him if it could be Eden. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. She's smart, right? Knows how to push buttons? I told him she was more than smart. She was practiced. Manipulative. Trained by years of getting away with anything because no one ever called her out. He gave me options. Security cameras, a digital tracking monitor for my phone, changing my license plate to a temp tag. But most importantly, he said, "Whatever this is, it's not random. She wants you unsettled. That means you're doing something right." His words stuck with me. You're doing something right. I held on to that when I walked out to my car that evening, scanning the lot with new eyes. I held on to it when I drove home without taking my usual route, circling twice before pulling into my building's parking garage. I wasn't afraid. I was alert. And I knew Eden. She would escalate until someone made her stop. So I decided to stop playing defense. I started building a case. I went through old bank statements, email trails, every payment I'd ever made on behalf of the family. I made it a timeline, dates, receipts, screenshots. I pulled old voicemails from my mom asking me to help Eden out just this once. I gathered screenshots of her Instagram posts, the ones that contradicted her victim act, flaunting things she supposedly couldn't afford without my help. I sent all of it to a lawyer I'd quietly retained months ago. Her name was Nadine, and she specialized in restraining orders, identity misuse, and domestic financial abuse. When I first met with her, I didn't think I'd actually need the full scope of her services. Now, I was handing her a binder's worth of evidence with dates, names, transactions, even conversations from old text backups. She reviewed everything with a calm, almost surgical demeanor. "You're not overreacting," she said. "This is calculated harassment. And it's not just emotional anymore, it's legal." That word hung in the air. Legal. I hadn't thought of it that way, not seriously. But she was right. Eden had used my identity, attempted fraud, tried to access an account I'd already revoked. She had sent someone or gone herself to take a photo of me without consent. That wasn't drama. That was criminal. Nadine moved quickly. Within 72 hours, I had paperwork ready for a cease and desist. I signed the forms and let her file the rest. I didn't send it to Eden directly. I wanted her to be surprised. I wanted her to get that letter and feel the weight of consequences for the first time in her life. The next few days were quiet again, like the universe was holding its breath. Then came the explosion. I got home from work on a Thursday evening to find a voicemail waiting for me, this time from Dean. "What the hell did you do?" he snapped. "Eden got served. You sent lawyers after your own sister?" I didn't answer. He called again, then again. Finally, I picked up. His voice was already at full volume. "You've gone too far. You're destroying everything." I stayed calm. "No, I'm protecting myself. Something you should have done a long time ago." He scoffed, clearly pacing. "This isn't protection. This is revenge." I paused, letting the word sink in. "Maybe it's both," I said. "Maybe that's what happens when people finally stop letting others walk all over them." He cursed again, ranted about how I was going to ruin the family name, whatever that meant. I ended the call with one sentence. "If Eden keeps pushing, next time, it won't be a warning." I didn't hear from him after that, but 2 days later, my lawyer forwarded me an email Eden's new attorney had sent in response. It was full of bravado, empty threats, claims that I was emotionally unstable, that I was using my financial status to bully her. Nadine smirked as she scrolled through it. "They're bluffing," she said. "They've got nothing. And if they push it, we can file a claim for defamation and financial abuse." For the first time, I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger, not even satisfaction, just relief. Like someone had finally seen what I'd been screaming in silence for years. That I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't overreacting, that I had been taken advantage of by people who smiled in my face and drained me behind my back. Still, I knew Eden wouldn't stop with legal games. So I got ahead of her. I gave Nadine permission to issue a restraining order if Eden violated the cease and desist in any way. I also filed a police report for the photograph and made sure my office added additional surveillance coverage near the building entrances. No more looking over my shoulder. No more second-guessing my instincts. That weekend, I deleted every trace of my past financial ties with the family, old bank logins, shared platforms, emergency contacts. I changed my passwords, set up two-step authentication, locked down my life like I should have years ago. And when I was done, I sat in my living room, lit a candle, and just breathed. No texts, no emails, no guilt, just silence. Beautiful, earned silence. But as I sat there, one final message came in, from a number I didn't recognize. Just one sentence. "This isn't over." I stared at the screen, smiled, then blocked the number. Because for me, it was. It's funny, isn't it? How people can be so sure they know who you are, so sure they understand what makes you tick. Eden thought she had me figured out. So did my parents. But none of them saw the walls I was quietly building. None of them knew the strength it takes to walk away, to finally decide that your life is more important than being the savior of everyone else. And the truth is, when you get to that point, when you realize you've been giving everything and getting nothing in return, something inside you shifts. You stop waiting for permission. You stop worrying about their opinions. The silence that used to feel oppressive, now it felt like freedom. A week after I blocked the last threatening message, I woke up on a Saturday morning, feeling like I could finally exhale. I made coffee, took a long shower, watched a few episodes of a show I hadn't had time to binge in years, and for the first time in forever, I didn't feel a single twinge of guilt. No, the only thing I felt was peace. Then came the call. My mom. I hadn't heard from her in days, which was a relief, but also made my heart beat a little faster when her name popped up on the screen. I hesitated before answering, but when I did, her voice was soft, almost fragile. "Nova, I don't know where to start. I just wanted to tell you. I understand now. I see what you've been saying all along." I closed my eyes, leaning back in the chair. For a moment, I wasn't sure how to respond, but she kept talking. I never realized how much you were carrying. I thought if I kept giving you little things, it would be enough. But it wasn't. I can see that now. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for asking you to hold us all up, for making you feel like you had no choice but to keep giving. Her voice cracked at the end, and for a second, I almost let myself feel the weight of all the years. Almost. But instead, I breathed deeply, steadying myself. "Thank you, Mom. That means more than you know." She sniffled but didn't respond right away. I could hear the struggle in her silence, like she was waiting for something else from me. Maybe forgiveness. Maybe some kind of admission that we could go back to how things were before I set all those boundaries. But I wasn't giving that. Not anymore. "I'm not asking you to fix everything," I said, keeping my voice even. "But I can't fix it for you anymore." She was quiet again. "I don't expect you to. I just want you to know we'll be okay." We'll find a way to get by. I know, I said softly. You will. And I meant it. For the first time, I wasn't pretending to be the glue that held everything together. I wasn't waiting for them to realize how much I'd sacrificed or how much I had hurt in the process. I wasn't going to make myself small anymore just to keep everyone else comfortable. My phone buzzed again as we ended the conversation, and I saw a text pop up. From Dean, it read, "I'm done. I can't keep fighting this battle. Eden's out of control, and I can't do it anymore. I'll be by tomorrow to pick up some things. Can we just be civil about this?" I stared at the message for a few moments, then put my phone down. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was just done. So I didn't respond right away. I needed space, not just from him, but from all of it, the guilt, the drama, the manipulation. The next day, Dean showed up at my apartment with a bag in hand. I didn't ask what was in it. I didn't need to know. We didn't say much as I handed him the key to the storage unit where he'd left some of his things. But when I turned to walk back into my apartment, I heard his voice. "You don't have to cut me off too, Nova. I just want to fix things. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to." "You can't fix what you didn't break," I said quietly. And then I closed the door behind me. It wasn't a dramatic exit. It wasn't a big fight. It was just me, finally walking away from something I'd let hold me captive for far too long. I didn't need them to see it. I didn't need an apology. I didn't even need to explain myself. I was done pretending to be part of a family that only saw me as a resource. I had no idea what would happen next. I didn't know if they'd continue to try to guilt me into coming back or if they'd let the truth sink in. But for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for answers from anyone. I wasn't looking for validation. I was just living my life. No more calls, no more texts, no more playing the part. And the silence that followed, it was a relief. For the first time, I wasn't terrified of what would happen if I stopped being the person everyone relied on, because I had finally learned what it meant to rely on myself. And that, I realized, was the real freedom. Eden never came to confront me again. Neither did Dean or my parents. Maybe they were ashamed. Maybe they thought they could fix things in their own way. But none of that mattered. I had set my boundaries, and they had to respect them, whether they liked it or not. Life went on. And as I rebuilt my life, cutting out all the toxic influences, finding peace in the stillness, and focusing on my career, I realized something I hadn't before. I had always been the strong one, but now I was the one who chose how to be strong. I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't need their drama. I didn't need to be their hero anymore. All I needed was me, and that was enough. The family I thought I'd never be able to walk away from, it didn't define me anymore. I defined me. And for the first time in my life, I could say that with certainty. Story 2, I never thought I'd be the one to cut ties with my family. I always imagined I'd be the dutiful son, the one who'd stick around, help out when needed, and be there for my parents no matter what. But life has a funny way of showing you people's true colors when money is involved. My name is Daniel, and I have a twin brother, Jason. Growing up, we were always treated a little differently. Jason was the golden child, athletic and popular, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. I, on the other hand, was the quieter one. I preferred books over sports and computers over parties. It wasn't that I resented Jason. I didn't, but I always knew that between the two of us, he was the favorite. Still, I never thought it would come to this. We both graduated from college at the same time on the same day. It was supposed to be a proud moment for our family. Jason had gone the traditional route, studying business, while I had taken a different approach. I had started working online when I was 16, freelancing, saving every penny I could. By the time we graduated, I had a decent amount of money saved up. Not enough to be rich, but enough to be comfortable. The day after graduation, my parents surprised Jason with a brand new luxury car, a sleek black BMW. He was ecstatic, jumping up and down, hugging our parents like they just handed him the keys to a mansion. I was happy for him, truly, but I couldn't help but feel a little curious. What about me? I didn't expect a car. That wasn't my style. Maybe a watch, a heartfelt letter, even just a "we're proud of you" would have been nice, but when my dad handed me an envelope, I felt a weird pit in my stomach. Inside was a bill, a long list of numbers, amounts, and final totals that I stared at confused. What is this? My mom smiled as if she'd just given me the best gift in the world. It's only fair, Daniel. You've been working for years. You've saved up so much. It's time for you to help out the family. My dad nodded. Jason doesn't have anything saved up yet. He'll need help getting started in life. But you're responsible. You've got money. This is just a small way for you to contribute. I felt my blood run cold. They weren't giving me a gift. They were handing me their debt. They expected me to pay for them while they rewarded Jason with a luxury car. And they actually thought this was fair. I looked at Jason expectantly. Why? I don't know. Maybe a little guilt, maybe a hey, this isn't right. But he just shrugged and said, "Come on, man. You always say you don't care about money." That was when I made my decision. I took a deep breath, folded the paper neatly, and slid it back into the envelope. "Thank you for this," I said, my voice even. "It's a real eye-opener." My mom beamed. "I knew you'd understand." I smiled back then. I packed my bags and left. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just walked out. They didn't try to stop me. I don't think they fully realized what I was doing. Not yet anyway. But that would change soon enough because 2 weeks later I got the first desperate call. I ignored the first call, then the second. Why the third call? My voicemail was full of messages from my parents, my brother, and even my aunt. At first they were casual. "Hey Daniel, we just wanted to check in. Call us back then." A little more insistent. "Daniel, why aren't you answering? We need to talk." Then, desperation. "Please, Daniel. We didn't mean it like that. Just call us back." But I didn't. That I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of acting like nothing had happened. For the first time in my life, I was putting myself first. The first week after I left, I stayed at a cheap Airbnb in another city. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet, but I knew I wasn't going back. I had enough savings to figure things out. But my parents, they weren't as lucky. By the second week, my brother started calling. At first, it was all bravado. "Dude, stop being dramatic. Just come back already." I blocked his number. Then my mom switched tactics. "Daniel, sweetheart, we're struggling. You know, we've always supported you. Can't you just help us out a little?" That was rich. Coming from the woman who had smiled as she handed me a bill instead of a congratulations. Then the real panic set in inning. I was checking my email when I saw a message from my dad. Subject: "Please read this." Sony hesitated, but curiosity got the best of me. "Daniel, we're in trouble. We took out some loans we can't pay back, and we thought we could handle it. But things are getting worse. Jason doesn't have the means to help us. And we thought you wouldn't mind. You've always been so independent, so responsible. We misjudged the situation. And for that, I'm sorry, but we need you. Please, at least call us back." I stared at the email for a long time. It was the first time they had even come close to admitting they were wrong, but it still wasn't an apology. Not really. They weren't sorry for how they had treated me. They were sorry that I had left. And now they're perfect. Golden Child wasn't enough to fix their problems. For years, I had watched them favor Jason, give him everything, and then make excuses for him while expecting me to be the responsible one. And now, when their choices had finally caught up to them, who did they turn to? Me? Because Jason, the son they had spent years prioritizing, wasn't capable of helping them. I closed the email without responding. Then a few days later, I got the call that changed everything. It was my aunt, and for the first time, I hesitated before ignoring it. I stared at my phone for a moment before deciding to pick up. I didn't know what to expect from my aunt. She wasn't as involved in the drama, but she'd always been somewhat of a peacemaker between me and my parents. "Daniel." Her voice was soft, almost pleading. "Can we talk for a minute?" I sighed. "About what? About your parents? They're worried about you?" "Yeah, I know," I said, keeping my tone level. "But I think they're a little more worried about themselves right now." There was a long pause. Then she said, "Please don't be like this. They made a mistake. They thought you would understand. They didn't mean for things to go this way." I could hear the desperation in her voice, but I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. I took a deep breath and asked the question that had been swirling in my mind for days. Why isn't Karen? Why did they buy Jason a car if they're struggling? If they're in debt? How is that even possible? How could they think that's okay? There was another long pause. Then finally she spoke, but her voice was shaky. I don't know, Daniel, they thought they could handle it. They always wanted to give Jason the best, and they figured it would be a good way to celebrate his graduation. They never imagined you'd leave over it. I felt the weight of her words, but it didn't change anything. My parents had always put Jason first, giving him whatever he wanted, and now they had crossed a line that I couldn't ignore. And what about me? What did I get for graduating? A bill for their debt. I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. She was quiet for a moment. They didn't know how to show you. They were proud of you, Daniel. They thought you'd understand because you've always been the responsible one. But they were wrong, and they regret it. They really do. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. It's not about that. It's about respect. It's about how they've treated me all these years. How they've always put Jason on a pedestal and expected me to take care of everything else. I could feel the anger rising, but I kept my voice steady. They didn't give me a car, an opportunity, or even a proper thank you for all the work I've done. Instead, they gave me their problems, and now they want me to fix them. And Karen was silent for a long time. Daniel, I think they're finally realizing they've messed up. They just don't know how to fix it. Please come home. Let them make it up to you. I wasn't sure if I could. The emotional toll was too heavy, but something inside me softened just a little. Maybe, I said, but they have to show me they're serious. This can't just be another excuse. If they really want to fix things, they need to prove it. Aunt Karen sighed in relief. Thank you, Daniel. I know this isn't easy. Before I could respond, she added, but there's something you should know. Jason called me too, and he's been asking if you'll come back. He's not as indifferent as you think. I frowned. Really? He's actually concerned. Yes, she said quietly, but it's more than that. He's starting to see the bigger picture. He's starting to realize just how much you've done for the family and how much he's taken for granted. I didn't know what to think of that. Jason, the golden boy, realizing his actions. It sounded too good to be true. But maybe, just maybe, things could change. I still didn't know if I was ready to go back, but I had a feeling this story wasn't over yet. And in the next conversation, I would hear something that would push me to finally make a choice. The days passed, and I stayed in my little Airbnb, sorting through my thoughts, still refusing to call back. But then something unexpected happened. It was a Thursday evening when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Daniel? It was Jason. Yeah, I replied. My voice is cool. Jason's voice was shaky, and there was a long pause before he spoke again. Daniel, I'm sorry, but things got worse. Mom and Dad, they didn't listen. I tried to talk to them, but they're stubborn. They kept insisting they'd manage, but now they've had to sell the car. My heart sank, but a part of me couldn't help but feel vindicated. They sold the car. I repeated, my voice cold. Yeah, Jason's voice cracked. They had no choice. The bills piled up, and we couldn't keep up with the payments anymore. They sold it to cover some of the debt. It's gone. Daniel, I don't know what to say, man. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. A rush of satisfaction washed over me, mixed with something darker. They had chosen Jason. They had handed him a car and thrown my efforts in my face. And now, with all their mistakes catching up to them, they were losing it all. I wanted to gloat, to rub it in their faces. But I didn't say a word for a long time. Jason kept talking, his voice breaking. But I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. Finally, I spoke, my voice firm. Jason, you didn't have to lose the car. You should have known this would happen. That they wouldn't have the means to keep up. They always expect me to clean up their mess. But this time, I wasn't there to pick up the pieces. Jason was silent. I warned them too, I continued. My words sharper now. When they handed me that bill instead of a gift, I told them it would come back to bite them. And now it has. Jason's voice grew desperate. Daniel, please. I know this is messed up, but they didn't mean for this to happen. We never wanted it to turn out like this. I paused, savoring the feeling of power in this moment. I had finally broken free from their grip, from the years of being in second place. You know what, Jason? I said coldly. Maybe it's a lesson they needed to learn the hard way. If they'd been a little more thoughtful, they wouldn't be in this situation now. I hope it stings. Jason started crying, and for a second I almost felt guilty. But then the image of my parents' smug smiles when they handed me that bill flashed in my mind. I didn't feel guilty. Jason's sobs echoed through the phone, but I didn't offer comfort. Instead, I hung up. And for the first time, I felt a sense of justice. The scales were balanced, and my family was finally learning the consequences of their actions. The next few days were quiet. I kept to myself, staying in the Airbnb, not responding to any messages or calls. I wasn't even checking my phone much except to catch up on work. It felt freeing. Honestly, I didn't have to deal with anyone's drama anymore. Then on Sunday afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I was about to ignore it, but something inside me told me it was time to face it head on. I picked up Daniel. My mom's voice came through shaky and desperate. "Please, can you just hear us out?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, slowly exhaling. It had taken them this long to come to me, and it felt good to know they were finally on the other end of the phone. "Daniel, we know we messed up," she continued. "We never should have put all that pressure on you. We should have been better. We're so sorry. Please come back. We'll fix everything. Just come home." I could hear the pleading in her voice, but it didn't move me. This was the same woman who had always told me to be responsible while giving Jason whatever he wanted. The same woman who, instead of appreciating my hard work, had handed me a bill for their failures. "Mom, you're sorry?" I said slowly, letting the sarcasm drip into my words. "You're sorry for what exactly?" "Buying Jason a car while I was left to handle your mess. Is that what you're sorry for? Or are you sorry because you had to sell it?" There was silence on the other end. I could almost hear her brain trying to process that, the reality of what she had done sinking in. "Daniel, we never meant for things to get this bad," my mom said, her voice breaking now. "Please just come back. We'll do whatever it takes to make it right. You're still our son, and we love you." I rolled my eyes even though she couldn't see me. It felt almost pathetic hearing her beg after everything they had put me through. "I'm sure you love me," I said, my tone flat. "But love doesn't fix years of favoritism and neglect." "You didn't think about me once when you made those decisions. Not once." I paused, letting that sink in. Then I added, "And frankly, I don't need your apology. It's too late for that." "You should have thought about this before." The line went quiet again, and I could feel my anger building, but I kept it cool, just like I had learned to over the years. "I'm not coming home, Mom. You made your choices, and now you're living with the consequences. I'm not here to clean up your mess anymore." There was a long, drawn-out pause, and then my dad's voice came on the line, sounding strained, desperate. "Daniel, please. We were wrong. We see that now. We didn't mean for it to come to this. We never meant to push you away." I let out a low laugh, and my voice dripped with contempt. "You didn't mean to push me away. Well, you sure have a funny way of showing it. You bought a car for Jason, handed me a bill, and expected me to just keep taking it. You didn't push me away. You kicked me to the curb. Please, son." My dad's voice cracked. "We were just trying to give Jason something. We wanted him to feel proud of his graduation, and we thought that would make it right. But we realized it wasn't worth it. Not if it meant losing you." It almost felt like they were groveling now, and the power was entirely in my hands. "You're right about one thing, Dad," I said, my voice sharp. "You lost me, and you're not getting me back just because you've suddenly realized your mistakes." I paused, letting the silence stretch out between us. "I'm done here," I added coldly. "So keep your apologies. Keep your guilt. And next time you want to celebrate someone, maybe think about who you're leaving in the dust without waiting for a response." I ended the cold. I stared at my phone for a long time, the satisfaction of finally putting my foot down sinking in. They had taken me for granted for far too long, but now they knew what it felt like to lose me. I could hear their apologies echoing in my mind, but it didn't matter. They had had their chance, and now they would have to live with the consequences. Weeks passed after that phone call, and I didn't hear from them again. The silence was almost louder than the chaos that had led up to that moment. I kept going about my life, working, enjoying the peace and freedom I'd fought so hard to create. Then one afternoon, a package arrived. It was for my parents. I stared at it for a while, unsure of what it could be. The thought of them trying to contact me again made me hesitant, but curiosity won over. I opened the package. Inside was a simple letter, handwritten, the paper creased from being folded too many times. "Daniel, we don't expect you to forgive us. We know we hurt you, and we've realized we've lost something far more important than a car or a gift we could never afford to give you. But we want you to know we're sorry and will always love you, even if you never come back. Please don't forget that I read the letter twice." My eyes scanning over the words, feeling nothing. It wasn't enough. It wasn't even close. I threw the letter into the trash without a second thought. The satisfaction of not being swayed by their last-ditch effort settled in. I wasn't angry anymore, just in different ways for Jason. I'd received a few more texts from him apologizing for being caught in the middle. I ignored them too. He had chosen his side. He would have to live with the consequences of that choice. Life went on. I kept growing and my business kept moving forward with my plans. It was all on my terms now, and I wasn't about to let anyone, least of all my family, take that from me. And as for them, well, they would always have their regrets. But at least I didn't have to carry the weight of theirs anymore. The end had come, but it wasn't a tragic one. It was a reminder that sometimes you have to step away from the people who never gave you a chance to be seen so that you can finally see yourself clearly. And for me, this was the beginning of a new chapter. At the end of the day, Daniel made a bold choice. He stopped letting his family's actions dictate his worth. It wasn't easy, but by walking away, he finally took control of his own future. It's a hard truth, but sometimes the most important relationship you can nurture is the one with yourself. What do you think? Was Daniel right to leave? Or should he have given his family another chance? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out. Story 3. At my dad's birthday party, my name tag said, "The disappointment." My stepmom laughed. Well, it's true. So I stood up, clinked my glass S, and said, "I'd like to make a toast to the last time you'll ever see me." Dad choked. But the real shock came when I walked out the door and left behind one final. I'm 32F, and if you asked my dad, he'd probably tell you I'm his biggest disappointment. Not because I'm in trouble with the law, not because I'm jobless, not because I've done anything actually bad, but because I chose to live my life on my own terms instead of following his plan for me. My dad, James, is the kind of man who likes things his way. He has always been big on control, appearances, S, and D, most of all, family loyalty. As long as that loyalty benefits him. When my parents divorced, I was 10. It wasn't an ugly divorce, at least not outwardly, but my dad moved on fast. Within a year, he was remarried to Stephanie, a woman who had 2 kids from her previous marriage, Hunter and Olivia, and that's when everything started to change. At first, I really tried. I was just a kid, and I wanted my dad to be happy. Stephanie was nice in that fake sweet kind of way, overly enthusiastic in public, always making a show of how she was trying to blend the family. She'd hug me a little too tightly and say things like, "I just know we're going to be best friends." But behind closed doors, it became pretty clear that she only had one priority for her own kids. My dad, who had always been involved in my life before, suddenly had new priorities. He went from being my dad to being their dad. It was small things at first, like missing my soccer games but never missing, Hunter's forgetting to pick me up from school tea, always being on time for Olivia's dance recitals. Then it escalated. By the time I was 14, I was expected to babysit them, help with chores that they never had to do, and act like a good big sister while they got away with everything. If I ever complained, my dad would sigh like I was exhausting him and tell me they needed more attention. "You're older. Be mature." Stephanie, on the other hand, had a more direct approach. She'd just call me selfish. The final straw was when my dad drained the savings account my mom had set up for me, money that was supposed to be for my college tuition. My mom fought hard in court to get that money back, but by then, the damage was done. I was furious. I barely spoke to him my last year of high school, and when I left for college, which I paid for on my own, I only came back for the occasional holiday. Year passed, Ed, and my relationship with him never really recovered. I still got invites to family events, but they always felt more like an obligation than a real effort to see me. I could tell that to my dad and Stephanie. I was just the difficult child who refused to play happy family. Why, Hunter and Olivia. On the other hand, we're the golden children. Which brings me to my dad's birthday party. Stephanie was throwing a huge party for him. One of those over the top, invite everyone we ever met. Parties. Thing. I wasn't planning on going, but my aunt was one of the few family members still on my side. Cece convinced her to stop by for a little while, she said. Maybe things have changed. SS spoiler, they hadn't. The moment I walked in, I felt it. That familiar, unwelcome tension. People the first hadn't seen in years were there, but instead of warm greetings, I got polite nods. Conversations flowed around me, but no one really included me. I saw my dad across the room laughing with some old friends, but when his eyes landed on me, his smile flickered for half a second. Like he was surprised, I actually showed up. I was already regretting coming when I noticed a small table near the entrance. It had name tags. Stephanie had done this before at past events, claiming it helped people mingle. It was her thing. Most of the tags were normal. Uncle Mark, Cousin Rachel, Neighbor Tom. And then I saw mine. And I froze because my name tag didn't just say my name, it said something else. Something that made my stomach turn. I picked it up, staring at it, and from across the room I heard a familiar laugh. Stephanie's. She was watching me, a wine glass in hand, an amused little smirk on her face. I clenched the name tag in my fingers, heat rising in my chest. This was not going to go the way she thought it would. I stood there for a moment, gripping the name tag between my fingers. My brain took extra second to process what I was looking at. It had my name, but underneath, in smaller letters, someone had written ointment. At first, I thought maybe it was some kind of joke. Some awful, tasteless joke. Maybe a cousin trying to be funny. Maybe an unfortunate mix-up. But then I heard her laugh. Stephanie. I looked up and found her across the room, standing near the bar, sipping her wine like she didn't have a care in the world. Our eyes met, and that slow, satisfied smirk spread across her face. I could feel my pulse in my ears. A few people had noticed me standing there now, a couple of glances in my direction. No one said anything, but I could feel the weight of it. The expectation. I could almost hear the words they weren't saying. Don't make a scene. I took a slow breath and put the name tag back down on the table. I smoothed it out, aligning it perfectly with the others. For a second, I almost laughed. Of course. She did something like this. This was classic Stephanie. Not an outright insult. Not something blatant enough for people to immediately call her out on, but something just subtle enough that if I reacted, I'd look like the problem. I should have known the second I walked through the door that something like this was coming. A hand touched my shoulder and I turned to see my aunt, the only person in this family who had ever really understood me. Her brows were drawn together, her lips pressed into a tight line. She'd seen the name tag. Her eyes flickered toward Stephanie. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I forced a tight smile. "Yeah," I said, "I'm fine." But I wasn't. I was exhausted in a way that I didn't even know how to describe because this wasn't new. This wasn't even the worst thing she'd done. This was just the latest in a long pattern of making sure I always knew my place. I should have walked out right then. I should have turned around and left. But something in me said no, not this time. So instead, I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and did something that I knew would catch them off guard. I smiled a real easy smile, like nothing had happened at all. Then I picked up a glass of champagne from a passing server, clinked it lightly with my nail, and turned toward the room. Because if Stephanie wanted to show, I was going to give her one. I raised my glass just slightly, feeling the weight of the room shift as a few people glanced in my direction. I hadn't made a scene, not yet, but the quiet clink of my nail against the glass had drawn just enough attention, just enough to make Stephanie hesitate for a fraction of a second before taking another slow sip of her wine. Her eyes narrowed slightly, like she was trying to figure out what I was doing. I let the moment stretch just a little longer than necessary, like I was considering making a toast before I gave a small shake of my head and turned away, heading deeper into the party. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of reacting. Not yet. The party itself was exactly what I expected. crowded, overly polished, with expensive catering and carefully curated decoration. Stephanie had gone all out, as she always did, because everything in her life had to be a performance. It wasn't just about celebrating my dad's birthday. It was about showing off, about making sure people knew how perfect her life was, how loved she and my father were, and how successful their children had become. Their children, not me. Hunter and Olivia were already holding court in the middle of the room, surrounded by a small group of relatives who were all nodding along as Olivia gushed about her upcoming wedding. And of course, Dad's paying for everything, she was saying, flashing a smile as she twirled the massive diamond on her finger. We wanted something tasteful, a really elegant wedding. Not one of those tacky Pinterest disasters. I bit back a laugh. Olivia had always been like this. Polished, rehearsed, just the right amount of self-absorbed to make sure everything revolved around her, without seeming too obvious about it. Hunter, meanwhile, was leaning against the bar, nodding along as a few of my dad's old friends congratulated him on his new job, which I was certain he hadn't actually earned. Hunter had never worked for anything in his life. Every opportunity had been handed to him. Every mistake was quietly cleaned up by my father. I was halfway waited to walk over and insert myself into the conversation just to watch them squirm. But before I could, I heard my father's voice, he said. And when I turned, he was already making his way toward me, a drink in hand. His expression was carefully neutral. I didn't think you were going to come. I smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. Wouldn't miss it. He nodded, glancing at the room around us before looking back at me. You've been keeping busy, I hear. There it was. The polite, careful way he avoided actually asking anything about my life the same way he always did. I nodded. Yeah, work's been good. I bought a house last year. His brow lifted slightly. A house? Yep. He took a sip of his drink, not asking anything else. That was the thing about my dad. He hated when I did anything that made it impossible for him to see me as the failure he always thought I'd be. Every time I did something on my own without his money or his help, it chipped away at the narrative he'd built around me, the one where I was lost and selfish and immature. He didn't like that. He much preferred the version of me he could shake his head at, the version he could talk about in pitying tones when people asked about me. I could feel him searching for something to say, some kind of subtle dig. But before he could, Stephanie's voice cut through the conversation like a knife. Well, she said, stepping up beside him. Her smile was all teeth. At least she finally did something responsible. And just like that, I felt the heat rise on my chest again. I turned to her and she was beaming like she was just so happy to see me. But I knew that look. I'd seen it 100 times before. Stephanie was the kind of person who could insult you to your face. And if you got upset, you were the problem. She was just joking. You were too sensitive. I should have walked away. I should have let it go, but I didn't. Because something about this night, about this whole thing, was sitting wrong with me. Maybe it was the name tag. Maybe it was the fact that my dad had barely spoken to me before finding a way to brush me off. Maybe it was the way the entire room was filled with people who had never really been my family. Whatever it was, I was done. I turned to Stephanie, tilting my head slightly. You know I was going to let it go, I said. Voice lied, but I have to ask. Whose idea was the name tag? I saw the flicker of something cross her face just for a split second. Oh, come on, she said, laughing. You always take things so personally. It was funny, I nodded. Right, hilarious, she shrugged, sipping her wine. You know, if you spent less time being angry all the time, maybe you'd be. I held up a finger, cutting her off. Actually, I said, voice calm. I think you're right. Her eyes narrowed slightly. About what? About making a joke, I said, turning slightly, raising my glass. Because now that I think about it, I have a joke too. She blinked, caught off guard. My father shifted uncomfortably beside her, and then I smiled. Slow, easy. I'd like to make a toast. And just like that, the room started to go quiet. Not all at once. Not immediately, but conversation started to die down as people turned toward me. Curious, because people love the toast, especially an unexpected one. I could feel my father tense beside me. Stephanie let out a small laugh, shifting her weight like she was trying to brush me off. Oh, come on, you don't have to. I held up a hand, still smiling. No, really, I insist. The weight of the room shifted as more people turned toward me, curious murmurs rippling through the crowd. A few guests grabbed their drinks, ready to indulge in what they assumed was just a lighthearted toast. They had no idea what was coming. Stephanie's smile had tightened at the edges, but she was still playing it cool, still holding on to the idea that I was the same person she'd always known, the person who swallowed every insult, who let things slide, who never really fought back. My dad, on the other hand, wasn't so composed. He knew me better than she did. His grip on his glass tightened, and for the first time all evening, he looked directly at me. Not through me, not around me, but at me. I let the silence stretch a little longer, letting the anticipation build before finally raising my glass to my father. I began my voice flight, almost conversational, into Stephanie, of course. Because without them, I don't think I would have learned one of the most valuable lessons of my life. I paused, taking a slow sip of my champagne. Stephanie let out a small, breathy laugh. Oh boy. Here we go. A few people chuckled. They thought this was a banner. R. They thought I was about to say something self-deprecating, maybe poke fun at myself, smooth things over like I always did. I smiled. No, really. I mean it because I think we often learn the most from the people who challenge us. Don't you? I turned my gaze to my father. Dad, you always told me that family is supposed to build each other up, that we should support one another, celebrate each other's successes. My father's throat bobbed as he swallowed, his grip tightening on his drink. He didn't like where this was going, and I used to believe that. I continued. I really did. But then somewhere along the way, I realized something. The room was almost completely silent now. Stephanie's fingers were curled so tightly around the stem of her wine glass that I half wondered if it would snap. I set my glass down gently on the table beside me. I realized that for some people, support only exists when you fit into the version of yourself they want you to be. And as long as you play the role they've written for you, whether it's the golden child or the black sheep, they'll keep you right where they need you. And if you step outside that role, I exhaled sharply, shaking my head, well, that's when they show you how they really feel. I heard a few uneasy shifts in the crowd, people glancing at each other, Olivia looking at my father, waiting to see his reaction before deciding how she should feel. I saw Hunter smirking like this was all just entertainment to him and Stephanie. She was still smiling, but her knuckles were white. I used to think that if I just proved myself, if I worked hard, if I were successful, if I played by the rules, you'd see me differently, I said, my voice softer now but no less steady. But I get it now. It was never about me. It was never about what I did or didn't do. Stephanie opened her mouth, probably to cut me off, but I didn't let her. I turned my attention back to my dad because at the end of the day, I was never supposed to succeed, was I? His expression flickered just for a second. I let that hang in the air before I exhaled, rolling my shoulders back. But I did. I had built something for myself. I made a life that has nothing to do with this family. And let me tell you, it's been the most peaceful, fulfilling thing I've ever done. I could see the questions forming on people's faces, the doubt, the curiosity, because they had no idea what I was talking about. I was done letting them believe the version of me that Stephanie and my father had carefully crafted over the years. Stephanie let out another forced laugh, trying to regain control of the room. Oh, come on, this is ridiculous. It's just a name tag. I turned my gaze to her. You're right, I said smoothly. It is, but it's also a pattern. A lifetime of moments just like this. Little digs, little jokes, little ways of reminding me that no matter what I do in your eyes, I'll always be the disappointment. My father finally cleared his throat, stepping forward slightly. That's enough. I met his gaze head on. Oh, I agree. It is enough. And then, before anyone could process what was happening, I picked up my glass again. I raised it slightly, letting the weight of my next words settle over the room. This is the last time you'll ever see me. The silence was deafening. My father stiffened. Stephanie's jaw actually dropped slightly before she snapped it shut. Someone in the back muttered, "Wait, what?" And then, without another word, I set my glass down, turned on my heel, and walked toward the door. I could feel them watching me. I could feel the panic starting to creep in because this wasn't like the other times. I took one last glance back before stepping through the door, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was walking away from a fight. I was walking toward something, toward freedom, toward peace, toward the life I'd been building, away from the drama that had always defined my family. As I stepped outside, I took a deep breath, the cool night air filling my lungs. It was over. I had cut ties in a way I should have years ago. There was no more pretending, no more trying to win approval from people who had never cared about me unless I fit their image of what I was supposed to be. I drove home that night in silence, feeling a weight lifting from my shoulders with every mile. But even as I sat in my quiet living room that evening, there was a part of me that couldn't help but wonder if I'd gone too far. Had I really done the right thing? That I'd been too harsh? The next few days were a blur of texts and calls I didn't answer. I didn't look at social media because I knew it was full of the fallout. I'd walked out on my dad's birthday celebration. I had publicly humiliated him and Stephanie, his wife, my stepmother, who I had always felt was trying to push me aside in favor of her own perfect world. The family group chat was blowing up with messages, but I stayed silent, unsure if I could even face the confrontation that would follow. Finally, I got a text from my aunt. The only person who seemed to understand me was asking if I was okay. I didn't know what to say. I was okay. Better than I'd been in years, but also a little unsure. I told her I needed time. She didn't press. My father called me the next morning. "Where are you?" he asked in his familiar tone, the one that always sounded like I disappointed him. No matter what I did, I'm at home. I said I'm not coming back. His silence was all I needed to know. "You can't just leave like this. You know," he said after a long pause, "this family, we have to stick together." I didn't even hesitate. Not if sticking together means pretending to be someone I'm not. Not anymore. That was the last time we spoke. Weeks passed, and I stayed away from all family events, weddings, birthday parties, and whatever else they tried to organize. The rest of my family either fell into line with my dad and Stephanie's view of me, or pretended like nothing had happened. I heard through the grapevine that my dad was hurt, that Stephanie was furious, and that my brother and sister were disappointed in me for making a scene, but none of it bothered me. I knew I had done the right thing for me. I was still living my life, still thriving. And while I wasn't exactly happy about cutting them all off, I felt a kind of peace I hadn't known in years. I haven't spoken to anyone in the family since that day, so here I am asking, am I the asshole for walking out like that, for making the toast and cutting them off completely? Did I take it too far, or was I justified in finally standing up for myself? I know I'll never get my dad's approval. I know I'll never be the daughter you wanted. But part of me thinks that maybe I've finally figured out that I don't need to be. So Reddit, let me know. Was I out of line, or was this long overdue? If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more content like this, make sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to drop a comment below, sharing your thoughts. Do you think they went too far, or was the fallout completely justified?